let the floor, according to the agenda, to Mr. Rodan Hoja from Albanian Quality Journalism Center to talk about his topic. Rodan, the floor is to you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure being here with you. Well, I'm from the Albanian Center for Quality Journalism. Our main focus is young journalists and journalism students, trying to raise their capacities, to find them suitable solutions to their problems, to whatever they might be, labor, professional issues, everything that has to do with their induction into the journalism field, as well as preparing them to be even freelance journalists, because we know that journalism right now, not only in Albania, but all over Europe and the world, is suffering from the COVID pandemic, as well as editorial, let's say, pressure from the media managers and media owners for these journalists to produce what the owner wants to be produced. So about a year and a half ago, we conducted a study with journalism students, young professionals in the age gap of 20 to 28 for the journalism professionals, young professionals. There were 492 journalism and mass communication students that partook in the survey from the universities of Tirana, Durrës, Shkodër, and Elbasan, the main ones which have a journalism and mass communication program in them, as well as one private university in Tirana, Bedr University. We had part of our survey 49 young professionals who most of them, 95% are working in Tirana in some of the main media outlets as well as online portals. We had held open interviews with 16 media managers and owners, as well as 4 heads of media CSOs in Albania. To say that the findings and the results were heartbreaking is to say the least. The main focus of the whole survey was in relation to internship rights and internship procedures for the students, as well as labor conditions, labor rights, and let's say the procedures that these journalism students as well as young professionals go through the ropes of their profession. So we found out that 61% of employed students said that they had no type of contract with the owner of the media, whatever type of media that was either legacy media like television, newspapers, and so on, as well as online papers, online portals. And now it's kind of hard to define them because everything has become, especially online, has become blob of, there's no actual word to define how the media online operates right now, especially in Albania, which has diffused its working procedures through social media, through websites, through portals, and everything. So it's hard to say that this media has an online presence only in this category or this category or this category. We found out that 32% of the journalism students employed full-time in a media say that had not been either paid regularly or at all by the owners. 7% of professional journalists said that the probationary period, which according to the Albanian legislation is at maximum of 3 months, they had received no kind of compensation for that period, despite the law saying the contrary. 4% of journalists, professional journalists who had started work said that they had no type of contract with the owners. They worked through black market, basically. 5% of the journalists said that they had not been paid for the probationary period. 8% of professional journalists and 21% of the students answered that there had been cases where they had labor issues, but there was nowhere for them to address these issues, as well as there was a fear of repercussions if they went through these procedures, as well as 11% of the students and 12.5% of the journalists, this was the only percentage of people we interviewed said that they had actually taken some kind of action through court or administrative action. The main issues we saw through the whole process of interviews, as well as the online study, we saw that what the journalists and media CSOs said did not coincide with what the owners of the media said at the same time. One part, the owners and the managers of the media said that they had all the appropriate documentation, work contracts and everything. On the other side, the media CSOs as well as the journalists said the contrary. Even when there was a contract, there wasn't actually a definite contract. There were a couple of cases where even for national televisions in Albania, the contracts were not released to the journalists. They would say that the contract is signed, but the journalists would not get their copy. They would get their copy only at the end of their career at that television. When they were released from their contract, then the owner would sign the contract just as a fait accompli, just a procedure, and then release the journalist as well. The probationary period is the part which has most of the problems in Albania. Most media outlets use the probationary period of 3 months as a way of gaining free labor, despite the law saying that these 3 months, despite being probationary period, which basically provides that either the employer or the employee can terminate with just 5 days of notification, the payment is there. It doesn't mean that the journalists do not get paid. Most of the journalists, they either had an ignorance on the issue, or basically the owner said that if you want to work here, you should work the 3 months without any kind of pay. When we asked the owners on this, nobody accepted that this kind of practice was in use, but almost all the journalism students who basically use this time as an internship or as a means of getting into the media field said that they would not get paid during this period. And there were even cases where this probationary period was extended to 6 or 12 months, which is unheard of and basically unacceptable. The biggest problem we saw was that there was very little information for journalists, or very little, let's say, support for them on legal issues, on labor issues. We saw that there were only a few cases which went to court, and the journalists would basically, most of the time, win the cases. But for the most time, and from what we had, from what we got from the interviews, was that they would not even dare raise their voice for working hours, working conditions, pay, or anything that had to do with labor rights, because there was a fear of repercussion, not only about that media, but one of the journalists told us, basically, if you quit this job, so you basically enter into a black book of media owners. Nobody else will touch you. So the working contracts, as I said, were either basic or non-existent. And one of the main issues we also saw that most of the journalists through the official channels would get paid the minimum wage, and they would get paid cash in hand for the difference of what they actually got. So their benefits and taxes would show up as being paid at minimum wage, while they would get 3 times or 4 times the salary underhand. This was the means of the media outlets not declaring their taxes or their revenue or anything. From some of the journalists, this was seen as something good because they would get cash in hand without being taxed. But on the other side, the journalists we interviewed were 25 to 30 years old. So when they reach the retirement age, their retirement fund would be nothing if the benefits were not paid accordingly. These are some of the key issues that we saw, and they were so widespread that it has basically become a systematic problem. It's not something that has happened once or twice or 3 times. Most of the people, more than 50%, had either had these experiences or had someone that had happened to them. But if you have any kind of question, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Rodan, very much for this detailed presentation of your study. Instead, it has been a very good resource for us as a researcher on the other study that we did on the rights of journalists, and I can only confirm what you said about the lack of information among students of journalism regarding the profession as a job and as a work relationship rather than a mission, because I've been involved with support of Helsinki Committee to some information session in universities in Albania who has branches of journalism studies to inform essentially about these things, and they were very well received because the curricula in Albania do not involve such topic in their let's say formation studies. Now, according to the agenda, it is my turn to present the result of another study that was done in January 2020, and the methodology involved interviews, but also focus groups and face-to-face interviews with a group of approximately 60 journalists from all over Albania. And the results were, I don't want to repeat what my colleague said about the conditions of journalist work in Albania, but not heartbreaking, but in my opinion and my colleague opinion, very concerning about the level of violation of Code of Labor in Albania regarding journalists, because it is a problem that it is going for many years now, and no green lights are seen at the end of the tunnel, because the issues of contract and ownership are so many, for so many years labeled as such, but nobody is intervening. So I think that the main value of the study we did with a colleague, Andrit Shabani, in January 2020, and you can find the whole study in English at the web page of Helsinki Committee in Albania, and we can share it afterwards, is that we need to take some serious measures to regulate the ownership issue in the media sector, but also the journalists themselves should be more courageous to take their rights to the court and to ask for more formalized working conditions, because when they are not formalized, it is much easier for the owners to put them out of the market and to practically put them in the road without knowing their rights as job takers or as workers. And we are not, I mean, in all our countries, in the Balkan countries, we do not have the luxury to have one journalist less, because we know the state of our democracies and our media freedom of speech. So it is a prerogative for each of us to speak up for the rights of journalists in the workplaces and trying to make this sector as regulated as possible. I'm going to share now the screen with the results of the study. It is in Albanian, but I'm going to translate it simultaneously in English for our guests. And I hope that we can have an idea. Okay, can you see the screen sharing? Yes?
Yes, yes, Valbona, it's okay.
Okay, good. So basically, just a moment, please, because I'm having some issue here with the icons in my desktop. The question of this study were three. We wanted to know the level of violation of labor rights of journalists, why journalists did not react when these rights are violated, and why the journalists are not directed or addressed the courts when noticing such a violation of their rights. We did actually a comparative, a comparative analysis, how this violation varies from the cities for the ages of the journalist and by gender. For example, and the type of the media journalists are working on. And we found out that journalists in portals are often working without contracts. Their copyrights are not protected, and the journalists of portals do not feel themselves as part of the community of journalists. For journalists that are working outside Tirana, so in small cities, they work in very hard work conditions. They have very low pace, very high informality, because their salaries are paid either in cash and very rarely by bank. And the market, the media market in the cities, other cities than the capital, is very, very small. When we talk about the reporters that are, I mean, not in the studio, but ground reporters, they have said that they feel unprotected by the threats of criminal organization, or for example, when they are put into the courts, they are not protected by their media organization. They work with long hours without compensation or proper compensation as per labor code is stated. And the reporters are financially less, let's say, paid that the moderators of TV shows. And the journalists that are, let's say, not in the position of editors or program authors, they are less motivated to take their case of labor conditions to the court. For the young journalists, I can only repeat what Roden said, that they are exploited in their workplaces. They are not paid for internship periods. And when it comes to gender dimension of work journalists, we have reports that female journalists are sexually harassed in the workplace. They do not get the maternity leave paid, or it is not paid in full. They are supported, or they feel supported by their family, but not from their colleagues. And the female journalists in Albania have reported that they are faced with more, let's say, derogatory language by their owners, and they are less economically viable than men journalists. We have made an analysis of all the findings, and we have ranked some of the reasons why is the situation with labor conditions in Albania. First, media sector is characterized by a high level of concentration ownership. And the model of media business is supported in alternative sources. So the revenues that comes from the media activity are not the ones that keep economically stable the media business, and the interest of owners in the media sector are very often linked with government actors. On the other hand, the Inspectorate of Labor are not able to guarantee the implementation of law for media sector. Also, the lack of syndications or union, but not labor, let's say, syndication, not union of journalists, has left the journalists unprotected against the abuse of owners on their labor conditions. And also we have found out that the recruitment of journalists is done directly by the owners and not by the editors-in-chief or HR departments, which speaks for a vertical line of recruitment and make the journalists very vulnerable when asking for their rights in the workplace. When it comes to the reasons why the journalists cannot speak publicly about the violation of their rights in the workplace, we found out that the solidarity against, amid journalists is very low, and the lack of solidarity contributes also in the lack of organization, because the many journalists do not have the mechanism through which they can articulate their concerns. And also we have a lack of a syndical culture in Albania, and the story of organization of journalists make many journalists not to have faith and trust in this organization. Also, many journalists do not know very well the labor legislation, and as a consequence, they are not informed about the violation in the workplace. And there is a tolerance culture of violations of labor rights, and many journalists accept this as a normal part of their work. When it comes to the reasons why the journalists are hesitant to win their rights by judicial form, we have ranked three main factors. The one is the economical factor and social one. The second one is institutional factors, and the third ones are the cultural and psychological factors, which relates to the individual behavior we have in general regarding the relationship in the workplace. When it comes to economical and social factors, we have found out that the way how the media business functions in Albania put the journalists in a very weak negotiable position against the owners. The second one, given the high level of concentration in media ownership, makes that the owners of media in Albania are functioning as a small club and coordinating among each other to keep this level of labor conditions for all their media organizations, which increases the cost of conflict with owners, because once a journalist send or take his case to the court, the other owners take the signal that this journalist is not working for their media too. And the third factor is that the journalists are not very solidar with their colleagues. When it comes to institutional factors, we have found out that the average time for a judicial process is very long and costly, and because of the low salaries of journalists, they cannot afford to pursue such a journey, and also being without documentation that prove the existence of their formal working relationship penalizes them in the court. When it comes to cultural and psychological factors, we have found out that many journalists feel kind of obliged to their owners for getting that place of work, and they consider it as honor, and if they are going to sue their owners, it can feel like a betrayal they are doing to their owners. And also this tolerance culture that we have regarding the labor conditions contributes to this low level of pursuing violation of labor rights through the court. Okay, we have made some recommendations that you will find it in the report that we'll share later, but I wanted just to let you know that the situation is not good, and without massive intervention and not some cosmetic measures that we have been doing all these years, the situation is likely to remain the same, but with very much cost on the journalism itself and the freedom of media and the democracy itself. Thank you very much for your attention. And now, according to the agenda, we have our colleague from Montenegro, Milka Tadic-Mijovic, which will present her overview of the contract issue and ownership in Montenegro. Mrs. Mijovic, the floor is to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for this great opportunity to be with you. Today I have my presentation. I don't know if I can share with you. Do you see my presentation? Can you see my presentation? I don't hear you.
Yes, yes.
You can see,
Yeah.
yes? Okay, let me just, well, I have problem to okay. So, as I said, thank you very much. Unfortunately, many of the problems which you have been talking today, we are sharing, and I think this is generally a problem in the Balkans, that the labor condition of journalists are really not very good, and that those conditions are one of the reasons why the freedom of media is not on very high level in most of our countries. So I would like to, I cannot, I don't know what is going, okay. So I will start with the context in Montenegro. Montenegro, Democratic Party of Socialists, has been in power for 30 years in Montenegro, almost 30 years. After 2020 parliamentary elections, Montenegro experienced first peaceful regime change for the first time actually in its entire history. For many years, we are negotiating with the EU since 2012, but we are still very far from the membership. The main challenges are rule of law and corruption, which are serious issues. One of the challenges is media freedom, which is as well another big problem and issue. we actually do not have in a country functional democracy. According to the 2020 Freedom House report, Montenegro was presented as a hybrid regime that changed this year, and we are now presented as a partly free country. We have unfortunately very difficult legacy in this 30 years of monopoly of DPS. When we are talking about media, professional media has been constantly in these 30 years financially drained through cuts of advertising, and they have been under constant financial and political pressure. RTCG is still controlled by powerful structure, and actually it was never a public service. Physical and verbal violence against independent media and journalists has been present for decades, and some media are still without transparent ownership structure. In the international reports, all of this is very visible. According to Reporter Without Borders 2020 World Press Freedom Index, Montenegro has been at the bottom in Europe, ranked on 105th place. There are concerns in other reports from State Departments to EU progress reports as well. We have many cases against of violence against journalists which are still unsolved, from the murder of Duško Jovanović to some other physical and verbal attacks. We have unfortunately no free media market in Montenegro. More than 90% of advertising by the state and public enterprises used to go to former regime media. Media market is destroyed by unfair competition. According to the Trade Union of Media of Montenegro, illegal employment, overtime, and working during and weekends are only some of the problems of media employees in Montenegro. Number of working hours are not clearly defined. Many journalists work more than 40 hours per week, and extra hours are usually not paid, unfortunately. Numerous employers do not pay taxes on wages, so journalists do not have health and pension insurance and other benefits. I saw it is unfortunately the case in Albania as well, or they are just paying a part of the wages they are paying by cash, and just on the small part of the wages they are paying benefits. According to the Trade Union of Media in Montenegro, they stated that the number of journalists in Montenegro has significantly decreased in the last several years. Editorial offices of the most widely read media have less than 20 journalists. Journalist salaries are still below the national average of 500 euros. Journalists often cover several positions at the same time, so they are working as not just as a journalist, but they are doing some other job in media as well. Yeah, I think that we are sharing the destiny of all other countries in the region, that this COVID pandemic actually is dramatically changing situation in all fields, but in media as well, especially in Montenegro. After Spain, Montenegro is the most economically affected country by the pandemic in Europe. We are depending on tourism, and last year we did not have a season at all. We had only just 10% of the tourists which we are usually having. The media are suffering huge economic losses, while the volume of work has increased significantly. Last year, the Montenegrin government provided 600,000 euros assistance. to media, but of course this was not enough to support and significantly improve situation in media. Many journalists in Montenegro work in difficult conditions. Some of them work from home and they have to invest their money in equipment. The volume of work and number of working hours have significantly increased, while salaries have been reduced in many media outlets. The number of unemployed journalists last year increased by 60%. What is actually relation between labor conditions and media freedom? Absence of permanent contract and fear of losing a job is actually ground for censorship and self-censorship. The influence of advertisers on editorial policy is evident. The economic crisis is affecting a number of formal and informal impact on the media, the owners and journalists. Self-regulatory bodies in the country are weak to strengthen media ethic and professional journalism. And I made some conclusions. Media and journalists are more vulnerable due to economic crisis, pandemic, shrinking market, and difficult transition to the new digital environment. Autocratic leaders, and unfortunately, I think we have them in all of these countries, increasingly abuse media economic weakness to gain control. In transition countries such as Montenegro, it is not difficult to control media. The former government was the largest advertiser and employer in, and unfortunately, it controlled not only the state funds, but also most private businesses. The new government made promises to improve media freedom and position of journalists, but still no actions have taken place. So this is my presentation, and I'm open for discussion and for your questions.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed with the details and the overview that you gave us regarding the situation in Montenegro. And we will have an opportunity to discuss it in our open session. Now the floor is to Mr. Krešni Gashi from Kosovo to present his presentation.
Hi, everybody. I didn't do a presentation like with PowerPoint, but I will start talking.
Miovic, you can stop sharing, please, because we are still viewing your. Yeah, no problem. It happens. Just stop share.
How to do that?
Just stop share. When you have few options on the top of the computer, you have stop share. Yes.
Yes. Now it's okay.
Krešni, the floor is to you.
So as I mentioned yesterday, I am the editor-chief of Kalza.com, and I am also law graduate. So by the profession, I'm a lawyer too, and I'm very well informed about the labor market and the labor rights here in Kosovo and also in the region. Like the other colleagues said, the situation is the same in. It's like the same as in Kosovo, like in the other countries. We have problems with the labor market, with the labor rights of the journalists that are working here. Like I mentioned yesterday, Kosovo has a lot of problems with the corruption and with the high, with a lot of pressure to the journalists in their jobs. So. What I find out is like we here in Kosovo we have a good situation because we have some good, like how to say, role model things that can separated and shared to the region. We have a good association of journalists who are very respectful from the community, and they have a good managing team who is taking funds from international to support their work. This team of Association of Journalists, they are advocating for the rights of the journalists here in Kosovo. And the good thing what the Association of Journalists did is they didn't just do research, but they asked also for response from the institutions and from the Ministry of Labor Works. 3 years ago, Association of Journalists, they did a research, and they find out that the rights of the workers in the media are being misused from the owners, and the workers, they don't have their rights. And they did some protests, and they did also a huge conference, and they invited there the Ministry of Labor Works, and they invited also the director of the inspectorate. And on that conference, some journalists and also the director of the Association of Journalists, they asked the inspectorate to make a plan and to go and to inspect all the media in Kosovo. On that year, the inspectorate inspected 33 medias in Kosovo, and I had the chance to look on that report, and the results were terrible. On 32 of them, the inspectorate find a lot of problems. They didn't respect the right for holidays. They didn't respect the right for contracts, and the payments were made in cash. The working days on the weekends were not registered. The working time, it was not registered, and things like that. So the report was very bad for the media. And after that, they asked the media to deal with the problems. The problems was that this inspection was done just to 33 mainstream media, the media who are known as credible media here in Kosovo and who respect the right of the workers. We have more than 100 media outlets here in Kosovo, and the others are known as more bad for condition for journalists. And I believe that there is a lot of problems also in this kind of media. What are the key things that the worst situation? The worst situation are with women journalists, that if they are pregnant, they cannot use the holidays, or if they are pregnant, they are enforced to sign a document in the end of the when they have to born their children, that they will stop their work, but they with their will they will start their job after 1 year or 2 years again. This is one of the biggest problem here, because being a woman as a journalist in Kosovo is very hard to work that. And also the other problem is that if you have a problem with the working condition in a media, you don't have an address where to send the case. I mentioned the inspectorate of the Ministry of Labor, but they will work just when they have a big pressure from the public. If you are going as an individual, you will not be treated as well, and they will close your case, or they will just ask you to go to court. The problem is that if we are going to the court, you will lose like 8 years until your case will be finished. Imagine, by statistics, we are monitoring the courts, and by statistics, you need to spend 8 years for a case on labor to be finished in the justice system of Kosovo. And the problem is that if the mentality here in Kosovo, because the owners of the media are very solidarity with each other, And if you will send somebody to court, they will know that you sent your ex media to court, and the new media will not employ you. They will know that if you are working to them, you will resend them to court, and the stigmatization on this time is very, very difficult for the people that are working to the media. So the biggest problem is that you don't have an address to send your case, and then just to talk and to start a process when your rights are broken. This is a problem, and I don't think that we have enough resources here in Kosovo to deal with that. One of the biggest reason is that the inspectorate and also the justice system, they are known as corrupted institutions, and the problem is that they are afraid from the media reporting. Imagine if you are a judge and you have to deal with a case that a journalist is sending to you for his rights. The judge will come to you and say, okay, I cannot deal with this because I can be under attack from the media owner. We have cases that have been open from 15 years before. Here in Kosovo, there was a case with one of the biggest newspaper here, Kosovo Sod. One of the employers cut his hand in during the job, and he sent the newspaper to the court. And after that, the boss of the newspaper started writing articles for everybody who was dealing with that case. He wrote articles for the Inspectorate of the Labor. He started writing articles for judges and things like that. So even today, nobody will deal with that case because they are afraid from the articles and from the propaganda which was run by the newspaper. And this was a signal for all the people who will try and start sending cases to the court, because if you have a situation when the judge is saying to you that I cannot deal with them because they will start writing for me, this is a problem. And, the problem to find good and credible judges to deal with these cases is one of the biggest challenges here in Kosovo. The other problem is that the bosses of the media, most of the bosses of the media here in Kosovo are connected with politicians, and if you are connected with politicians, you will have connections with the inspectorate and also with the justice system. They have a lot of money, and they are connected also with other companies, and they can just make you feel that you are alone in this country and you cannot solve your case during your lifetime. What can I'm actually a board member of Press Council, and what we are trying to do with the Press Council is just to enforce the media to be registered and to register their employers, because we have problems also with just the registering of the employers on the media, because by the law here in Kosovo, you cannot be registered as a media in the registry of businesses. You can you have to be registered as a business, and we have in the Press Council one like obligation in our status that if you want to be a member of the Press Council, you need to have a team on your desk, on your editorial desk. And we ask them to send us the number of the employers, the number of people who are journalists, and things like that. Most of the media, they send just the name of the director and the name of the chief editor-in-chief, but nothing more. Imagine you will have a letter with two employers in your media, and you are a member of the Press Council. What should be done if I'm asked here? What I'm trying to push forward in Press Council and also in my speeches every day, and also with the Association of Journalists, is like to obligate the media just to publish the names of the journalists in their websites. Imagine if you are going to the media, you will not find the names of the journalists who are writing the articles. This is why they are hiding them, because they know that if they write a name, they should pay the taxes, they should have a contract and things like that. In most of the media here in Kosovo, online media, in most of the online media, you will not find names of authors who are writing and doing their job, because they are trying to hide their names, because the employers are working without contracts and they are not paying the taxes as the law asks for them. This is the situation how it's in Kosovo. I believe that if we will put a standard that every registered media like every member of the press council if we can put the standard that every member of the press council will publish all the name of the employers in their website, it can be a good standard. And also I believe that we should put more pressure with the Association of Journalists to the Labor Inspectorate to do more inspections in the media and also to the online platforms to take care that the labor rights are being respected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Krešnik, for your overview and all the good ideas that you have given about the change of the situation, which is similar in our countries. And with your presentation, we close the session of presentation. Before we go to the special intervention from Mrs. Čavušaj and the other colleague, I would invite you to provide some suggestions regarding a question that we have, or a poll regarding labor conditions. I would like you to vote on the alternatives, because here we have the question, and these are the alternatives. How can we improve the labor conditions of journalists? A, through unions of journalists. B, insisting the enforcement of existing laws. And C, others. Please vote and submit, and we'll deal with the survey results after this session. Now the floor is to Ms. Čavušaj, who is an activist and also a journalist working for Exit.au. And for your presentation, please. You can unmute yourself. Or we have the results are very quick, and there is 50-50 through unions of journalists insisting the enforcement of existing laws, which means that not a single measure can solve the issue, but maybe the combination of two. Thank you very much for your opinions on this poll, and now the floor is to Ms. Čavušaj. Yes. Do you have problems with? Yeah, I'm just asking the host, because they are managing our audio settings. Please unmute Ms. Čavušaj, because apparently we cannot do it ourselves. The person from Helsinki committee say that you can unmute yourself. Have you proved it?
Can you hear me?
Now it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, finally. Yeah, initially it said that you had to activate my audio. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for this session. I'm very happy to be a small part of it. I'm just going to jump right through to the topic. So media ownership, I think I'm going to start on this point. In recent years in Albania, media ownership scheme has become a little bit more sophisticated, let's say. Now, traditionally, in countries like in Western Balkans and Albania and Montenegro and Kosovo, usually the media was involved in the trade of influences, and this still happens. You know, it's still that is the aim. It's still the media is still more like a business than a media. But what's been going on is that in recent years, the media ownership has been taken up by big businesses that have been built by acquiring public contracts, mostly unfairly or just by having a direct relationship with the government or powerful people. And now this big businesses, they have acquired a part of media ownership, and now it's not the government directly that controls the media, but it's this businesses that are like the first line of defense for the government, like a natural line of defense when it comes to public policies. Like if there is a dissent or opposition to a certain public policy and it directly affects them, because these are people that profit from public contract, they'll be the one to jump in and to create a certain narrative, to create fake news, to distort information, and basically to control the information that goes to the public. So this is what has been going on in Albania. I don't know how much this can be happening also in other countries in the region. And for this reason, and for also all the reasons that you already mentioned, it's really difficult for a journalist to be a journalist, I would say, and not just be another employer of another business, let's just say. Do your hours and get paid, and that's it. So that makes the situation really difficult to find a solution. Like we could go through, I would propose, that will be my first recommendation as a starting point, let's say, to start with advocacy. And in recent years, there have been improvement, just as there have been also improvements, funny enough, and there have been like free and independent media sprouting out. At least I'm speaking about the experience in Albania, but they also have, because to be financially independent, which is very difficult, like not to be compromised or not to be pushed into a certain editorial line, you have to rely on projects, you have to rely on financial help from international institutions, and even that can be very difficult to achieve. I'm especially speaking about our experience at Exit. We don't profit from anything that we write, so we have to rely on small grants and such. But what we've noticed is that the government still has a chance to interfere even in that, because they might not attack you directly, but they might still decrease your chances for getting financing and grants by spreading fake news to foreign institutions, and therefore in a way you are blacklisted, and it's very difficult. But I'm very happy that in Albania we've come to have a few small independent medias that are doing a great job, and I'm very happy for that. I don't know what I can add to anything that anyone has ever said, but I would like to especially hear maybe from Krešnik or Milka, what is the situation with the media ownership? And again, I would like to say that I will start with advocacy. I think that journalists need to band together, especially people who treat journalism as a call, not as a simple job. And I know that is very difficult. Like, for example, I still have to go as a contributor to the media I would love to work for. But it's very difficult because financing, as I said, is very limited. But we have been engaging more and more in activism, and I think we've become a sort of a small group, and I think we can take it further by exposing the problems, debating solutions, and maybe even proposing certain policies, which would be the end plan, I think. Well, thank you very much. I don't want to take more of the time, and maybe
we are completely on time, and
we are okay.
Yes. Because we have foreseen that until 5 to 1 we'll have the interventions, but I think that the information we are providing are valuable to anyone who wants to join the open discussion now, and we have around 60 minutes to go about it until the lunch break. So anyone is invited to take part in this discussion and give their own ideas how to improve the situation of work conditions of journalists in our countries. Maybe we can start with the question from Rezarta to Kreshnik and Mrs. Mamijovic. How is the situation of ownership of media in Kosovo and Montenegro, and how it can be improved? Yes, please.
Okay. So after the war, we had a good situation because there were a lot of money from donors that have been invested in Kosovo to promote good journalists and to invest in TV stations, radio stations, newspapers, and in different platforms of the media. The situation comes it gets more difficult after the huge money from donors was stopped. So some of the private TVs, they started to be connected with some politicians, or the other with some business. But for the good luck, some of the media are even today working as NGOs and working as non-profit media. So we have like 2 or 3 good professional media who are even today working in Kosovo and are known as independent media and media who are not connected with politicians, businesses, and dirty money here in Kosovo. It's quite difficult to work and to finance the production and work of this media. But for good luck, we have some money from donors, and also there are some companies that are financing this media. We have a big problem in you know that the in different countries we have the right of the cable TVs are paying for the rights to transmit the program that is being produced from TV stations. Here in Kosovo, we cannot enforce that law to make sure that the cable TVs will pay a fee for the national TVs and for the local TVs to finance the rights and the republish of themselves. But I think that the situation is in Kosovo is much better than in Serbia or in Albania. We can find here some media outlets when you can do your work in independent, without any pressure, without any influence from businesses or politician parties. There are like 2 big medias that they are working as NGOs, and we have also the 2 big televisions that they are working without any influence from outside. But the situation is going worse in local media, because in local media we have a big problems because the TV stations, the portals, the online media are financed by direct money from municipalities and from the government. So they are quite well influenced from that money, and it is very difficult to get them out from that circle, because they need that money. Because if you are working as a local TV station, the market of marketing is too low, and people are not paying for your products. So the only way to gather some money to finance your product is to go to the municipality, to ask the mayor to give you some funds to publish or republish its conferences. So it's very difficult in local media to be financed, and also the small media in different zones to finance them. There is another plan that is going and it's being run here in Kosovo. There is a lot of interest from Albanian businessmen to buy media here in Kosovo, and we see this as a tendency to buy professional media here and to get them in the circle of the big bosses from Albania. There are some news that some of the one of the biggest portal here and one of the TVs are being sold, but even today we don't know that in public. But I believe that there is a tendency to get that influence from businessmen from Albania to buy media here in Kosovo. I see that as a risk, because we need to have just professional media, not media that are being controlled from businessmen and from people who don't have their primary mandate to be a media, but to be a businessman, and after that to be a media.
Thank you, Krešnik. Maybe Milka would like to add something about the situation of media ownership in Montenegro, as Rezarta asked. Yes, we can hear you, but we have some connectivity.
A set of media laws which we introduced. Do you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we hear you, but you are frozen. Now we can try again. Yes.
That's all right.
Now it's okay.
Okay. After the media laws, which we changed in the beginning of 2000, most of the state media were privatized. But some of the new owners are very much connected with the powerful structures or with the businesses. So they actually have been supporting for years those in power. We have as well a strong private media, which were a part of anti-war media in the 90s, and they are functioning independently from most of the powerful structures. We have as well some few NGO media, which are financed through the projects, mostly from EU funds and United States and some other countries. So those media are conducting the serious investigations, and they are writing a lot about corruption, rule of law, position of minorities, and all these important issues. The main problem for me in Montenegro, and I guess in most of the Balkan countries, is actually the role of the public service. Public service was never transformed. Actually, the state television was never actually transformed to the real public service. In Montenegro, public service by RTCG is completely controlled by the former ruling party, and still is. The problem is, the main problem is we do not have a mechanism to elect independent council. So we had in the past few tries to transform this RTCG in the public and in independent media, but it was always stopped by the powerful structures. So this is, I think, for me, the key, how to make a public media in these countries. It would help a lot media environment, and it would strengthen independence of media.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have other questions, discussion, comments, reflections on the topic we are discussing about? So it is about ownership of media and contract issue of journalists. So it's about.
Can I just add something? Can I just add something? It's actually, we have with this digital media, we have a very interesting situation, because some digital media which are operated in the country, you do not know actually who the founders are, who the journalists are, who the owners are, from where money is coming. And those media are very often used as a tool to beat a political opponent or the critic of the regime. And the new media laws which we introduced last year did not solve this issue, and we do not have a very good regulations regarding this. So there is actually the situation in which the digital media can operate in Montenegro. They can write whatever they want without regulations.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a big issue regarding the regulation of online media that contrasts with the willingness of government to put control. But on the other hand, we know that media that operates without any rule is almost as dangerous as a regulated media market. So the floor is to anybody who wants to add something on the topic. Maybe other participants that have different experiences or different point of views, how we're going to solve this issue, which is becoming a kind of constant problem.
Maybe I can add just a little something. We touched a little bit earlier sexual harassment in the media environment. But there's also another side, is the system of promotion that also involves sexual favors.
Yes.
That it's not something that you can measure, and it's not something. And I don't know if other countries have more data or more information on this, but here in Albania is mostly whispered about. It's like an open secret that promotion is done in exchange of sexual favors, especially in the visual media. And it is a big problem because, of course, apart from very poor working conditions and being controlled and not having protections, journalists also lack the motivation because they can be promoted if they work, if they do the job. And all of this also makes it very difficult for them to go against if they are confronted with, like, I don't know, slap charges. They don't have the protection, and other than not having the protection, we go to the problem just increases because we also lack the independence of the justice institutions in this instance. I think that the problems are so systematic that they are interconnected with each other, and in a way it can be disheartening when you put them all out there, because you don't know where to start to tackle the problem. But I would say that one step apart from advocacy would also be to ask for transparency on media ownership. Another scheme that I think the media, or at least whatever media has, the owners are already known, because they cannot be allowed to have 100% of ownership of the media. What they do is that they acquire ownership partially in one media and then in another media, and then the other owner does the same, and it actually the same thing. There are two owners who own two medias and have the same line of editorial line, and their aims and their intentions are also aligned, and they have found a way to circulate the law in a way. So I think we also have to advocate for better laws and better control in media ownership, because this has become, I mentioned the ownership schemes because for me it's another step further on just the as I mentioned, the traditional exchange of influence. It is like they have now it's not just businesses being related to the media, but business being the media basically, and it becomes more difficult to solve all these problems.
You are absolutely right, and maybe I can add here, because the report I just presented dealt with the issue how this ownership market is regulated in Albania, and we have a problem that it is not regulated, because before a decision of the Constitutional Court to not limit the control of the ownership of control package in audiovisual media, we had kind of more liberalized market. But after 2016, one owner in a television can have all 100% of the shares, which means that the decision making is not made by an array of people, and it is not diversified, let's say, in the market. So one of the recommendation has been to, because this is one of the red flags that the media ownership report that BIRN has produced, has marked it out as a highly concentrated market, which limits the possibilities of journalists to move from one media to another, because there are not so many media that can afford to be open, you see. And in the small cities, this is very visible, but also in the national media, or you work for Top Channel, or you work for Klan, or you work for Vision Plus TV. And this is a family-oriented business, but if we had a kind of more liberalized market, journalists will be more able to look for better work conditions if there were more media. This is about the ownership. And regarding the transparency on media ownership, this has to do also with other initiatives that we have seen here in Albania regarding media online. You all remember the efforts to approve a law that oblige any media to be registered in the National Center of Business, as an effort to increase transparency. But on the other hand, you are afraid that by registering your business, I mean, online businesses, you are kind of imposing them some rules that want to control their content. And it has been a huge debate in Albania regarding this amendment to the law, but still the online media market is a big problem regarding the ownership, because there are rumors that the organized crime is financing some of the portals, and you cannot intervene on that, and as a state, I mean. And also this quick link between politics and media paralyze the state institution to overview or regard the work conditions of media as businesses. We have an inspectorate of labor, and when they go to a media company to see how the work conditions are implemented, you have phone calls not to inspect certain media who are favorable to the government, or also, I mean, journalists remains unprotected because they are like a sandwich between the owners and the state institutions, which do not reflect the violation of the labor code. Starting from the contracts, you can have the contracts in your media company, but they are not implemented. So how do we make sure that these contracts are implemented? These are some of the issues regarding contract issue and ownership in Albania. Okay, everybody else? Okay, we have still 30 minutes before we go to the break, and if there is no other questions or reflections or discussion on it, we can close it. Okay, then we'll see each other, I think, and at 3:30, which is the plenary session where we'll present the findings from this session. Thank you very much for your contribution, and I wish you a pleasant journey. See you. Bye.
See you later.